Just call me up.
I gotta get it ready first.
It hasn't been approved by the fire board yet, but it's still a draft.
But you know, if I'm off by an inch, I have to back it up 35 to 40 feet. You know, that's why it takes me 45 minutes to an hour to back something.
Take you trying to get a fourth? Trying to get a fourth?
Supposedly, as of yesterday, everybody
Did they know where to go?
We brought snacks, we didn't know.
We keep telling them where they can go, but
Do you have somebody coming or no?
It's not what you know.
If they respond to what you know. I guess we should have a motion.
Maybe all you guys should try.
I'm sick of waiting if you're waiting at the door or something.
I don't think Frank's still will.
We'll test it. Well, technically, 6:30. We sit here at 6.
I wouldn't wait.
Scott, you got another one? Never mind, we got it. We're good.
So while we're waiting for North Prairie, does anybody need a fresh copy of the budget?
No, I would take paper.
Should say fire board approved on it.
Fireboard approved. Well, the good news is,
Yeah, we do need one here.
I'll take
is it
paper.
didn't
I
want
like
to
paper.
I got 4 minutes, and I got to leave.
Anybody else?
I have mine.
Then you gotta set up for 30 seconds. Yeah.
Just need to make sure all the board members.
Okay.
If I could borrow you one of mine, I would. If I could borrow you one of mine, I would.
I'll tell you what, I don't think anybody needs to. I expected 2 of them to say yes and not.
I said I could be that front here.
Now,
Gary, you texting him pictures?
I'm slow on this thing. I'm slow.
He's texting the empty chair picture.
Little video, I sent you a video here.
That's why I want to.
Wait on you, bud. Where's Frank? He's usually prompt.
We're trying to locate Frank.
yesterday.
Is he with
said
Waldo?
he's coming.
Is he with Walden?
Did you try sports page?
He wouldn't be at the sports.
See, this is diminishing returns. Now that I know I'm late, I'm not showing up because everybody's gonna look at me. I'm claiming COVID.
Yeah, that is going to be okay, you show.
Are you making sandwiches for me last week?
Oh, yeah, well, if we're waiting, sure. You can bring the bread if you brought the
Last time you had donuts for everybody, it's
kind of a donut.
last year.
Donut.
Donuts for last year. I don't know, maybe it was leftover.
I don't remember that.
I do, because I was,
You were here earlier. Everyone else got here. There were no donuts.
yeah, there's 3 dozen donuts for me. I don't know what happened.
Hopefully you have a range tonight.
Well, I was just thinking that. I mean, it's technically 3 meetings running simultaneously. You can't call to order. We could. The dilemma is if you guys,
We've already tentatively approved it.
I was gonna say, all right.
So I mean,
The problem is if someone wants to change the budget, the concept is if it gets approved, whatever gets approved tonight, all 3 boards, when they work on their budget, don't change this because they want to agree to it.
well, if there's no changes tonight, we've already tentatively approved. So why don't you roll it on?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you guys can spectate.
That's about all we can do.
I will call the Village of Eagle Special Board meeting to order on October 6, 2022. I will not. Now, I will call the Village of Eagle Special Board meeting to order on October 6, 2022 at 6:38 p.m. Open meeting law requirements have been met. Roll call.
Greg Heine.
Here?
Chris Lauterbach.
Here.
Matt Leopard.
Here.
Chris Sanchez.
Excused?
Greg Schaaf.
Here.
Mike Shesta.
Here.
Rich Strauss.
Here.
I will call the special town board meeting held jointly with the Village of Eagle Board to order, met the open meeting law requirements, and we'll do roll call. Supervisor Chris Momarts.
Here.
Supervisor Molly Schneider.
Here.
Supervisor Judy Rosinski.
Here.
Supervisor Dan West excused, and Chairman Don Malik is here.
Ask everyone to stand and join us in the pledge, please.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any citizen comments or concerns?
Yes, my name is Peter Jensen. My address is W345, S as in Sam, 10489 County Road E. Edward, Mukwonago, and that would be in the town of Eagle. And I am the chairperson of the Eagle Spring Lake Management District. I would just like to say that this year has been kind of a remarkable occurrence for both the Lake District and our residents out there. We've gone many, many years without the need of calling the previous Eagle Fire Department. And this year, quite frankly, all hell broke loose, from dealing with boat fires to dealing with a forest fire. to dealing with several suicide cases, and a whole lot of EMS calls that we've never seen before, including some of those EMS calls required almost technical rescue to get people up to the roadway from down by the lake or a residence down there. First years are always difficult for a new organization to take hold, but I think that, you know, in working with the new Kettle Moraine Fire Department, I have been impressed with their capability, the fact that they're able to respond to so many calls without support from Mukwonago, and really some of their outreach activities. The Lake District does support the fire department, particularly since we have residents on islands that the only way to get to them is with support from the Lake District. We have had excellent cooperating relationships. I think that the budget that you're looking at is reasonable. I think that we have to recognize that, you know, in an initial organization, whether it's a business or a government entity, it's kind of guesswork, you know, until you start to get into a rhythm, and it takes a little bit of time to get into things. And I think that some of that growing pains you're going to note within here. But I think also we are in such strange economic times, it's difficult to budget. We went from having gasoline prices go up, they went down, now they're going back up again. We really have a difficult time in forecasting what the rates for a number of pieces of budgetary items are. So I would urge you to support the budget. I think it's reasonable. As a taxpayer, I'm more than glad to contribute to the Kettle Moraine Fire Department with my tax dollars in the town of Eagle, and I would just ask you to support it tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Other comments? If not, we'll move on. Our only item is the Kettle Moraine Fire District 2023 budget. Chief, anything you want to present, say, before full discussion?
No, I guess I can just answer questions. This one includes the grant. The only thing I would like to say is we took everything that all three boards, after presenting the budget, that all three boards had come back to us with, and work a little bit here and work on there, and I think we've gotten it down to a respectable and reasonable budget. We did get the award for the grant, which is written into this budget. So some of the line items, you know, some of the percentages you look at in here where we had to increase because of the budget, like the computer line item in ambulance went up, you know, 99%. It went from 3,000 to 12,000, but 9,000 of that is grant money to buy new computers with. So, you know, a couple of those line items like that. There was a part of the grant was $50,000 in payroll, and that's to staff the stations for part-time people on the weekends. And so that increased that line item. So when you look at some of them, yeah, some of those percentages just skyrocketed, but a lot of that is because of the grant where we had to add those into the line items. So if you have any questions as you're talking about it, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And that's all I have, I guess.
I have an overall question about this. I've asked about it kind of multiple times, and I just want to make sure that we qualify. So I'm going to read a resolution that the entities of the Joint Fire District in Lake Country pass every year, because I'm not sure if we qualify, and I've asked if we did, and I kind of have alluded to the fact that we have to stay under the CPI plus 2%, which it's 9% this year when everything is totaled, so this budget does, I think, stay within that, and I don't know if there's been any research done, but basically my understanding of the situation is that as long as you guys stay within that limit for the budget, the entities involved in the Joint Fire District can then, in addition to their standard levy limit, you know, kind of work this budget outside of that and not include it in their whole budget, so it makes it beneficial. So maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I don't know if anybody else has done research on this. Maybe Rich.
I don't remember the criteria, but we don't qualify. There's one thing in there, and I don't remember what it was. But I did hear about it, so I did check into it, that we could increase our taxes more than a tax levy limit with that. But
So So what is it that you don't think we qualify for?
I'd have to look at the requirements again. I don't remember.
So this is, just to kind of skip over the whereas part, but the state of Wisconsin pursuant to Wisconsin stat section 66.0602, subsection A, or subsection 3, subsection H provides that levy limits otherwise applicable do not apply to the amount that a city, village, or town may levy in that year to pay for charges assessed by a joint fire department, to the extent that the amount levied to pay for such charges would cause the city, village, or town to exceed the limits imposed under Wisconsin Stats Section 66.0602. And whereas that district was, below the expenditures, the total charges assessed by the department are below that amount. So this is kind of the resolution that has to get passed. So I'm wondering, have you looked into that on behalf of our other entities to determine if maybe how we could qualify for that if we don't this year, and what it is that we need to do? Because we're all facing budget issues, and that's not just this, it's statewide because of the levy limits and the calculations for that. So any help that we could get would be appreciated.
I actually did reach out to Chief Fennig
Okay.
from Lake Country twice, and he was in meetings both times. So I'm trying to do some research on it, and I know that I believe that Rich is correct, that there's one thing in there that we didn't qualify for. I don't remember what it was either, because we talked about this before. But I did try to reach out to Chief Fennig, and he has not gotten back to me yet. So I have been trying to, because they use it. And so I've been trying to talk to people that use it and qualify for it. But I haven't gotten anywhere with that yet.
Okay.
So I have tried, but.
I don't work in the same building, so I can't just walk over, and I don't see him often, but I will, and if I can find some free time, maybe ring over there and see if I can get hold of him.
Anybody else?
I just want to put on the record, I received a email with some concerns from a resident who did some great work on the budget. I emailed this to Chief, and I just want to comment that he went through line by line, and we sat on the phone probably 2 hours this morning and explained every detail to me, and to the point that I understood it. And so he was very, very concerned, and just wanted to make it clear that we understand this budget. So I just want to put that on the record.
I also received that question summary. A couple points, I think, just to try to help educate and have people understand some of the part of the budget. I think a huge key factor, one of the questions in there was the capital expenses. The capital expenses is not in the budget. Part of the budget presentation includes a capital expense projection, but the current budget does not include any of the capital expenses for next year. That would have to come back to the board for consideration. There was another key item. Oh, talked a little just before the meeting about some revenue that from FEMA grant that's not seen within the budget or Kettle Moraine Fire District. The resident is asking about a FEMA grant that the town of Eagle applied for last year in December. That money was for the Eagle Fire District, not for Kettle Moraine Fire District. So those monies are not part of Kettle Moraine. They are still sitting in Eagle's accounts, which have not been closed, won't be closed until the final audit's done. Then those will go back to the municipalities. Those monies won't even come to Kettle Moraine Fire District. Roughly 2/3, 1/3 split. So whatever the balance is left in Eagle, 2/3 roughly goes back to the town of Eagle, 1/3 comes to the village of Eagle. There were some questions about some of the insurance and if different things can be paid by the insurance. Some of the expenses becomes a little more sticky. If you look at the budget, it talks about physicals. A lot of us get an annual physical. However, that is through our insurance because that's as an individual. These physicals are requirements for certification at the department. Therefore, the employer's paying them. So it's not necessarily an individual getting their annual physical, it's a job requirement physical. So some of the differences that way. The questions, in my opinion, all the questions were good questions. It would be a much longer meeting, but I think they can all be explained and educated. I do think there are also a couple questions that in the next year maybe we will look at. There was a little bit of discussion of fire inspections. Does that get charged back to the people that are, the businesses being inspected? It doesn't. Is that something we look at? At the last meeting, there was just a little discussion of calls that might be from some type of illegal activity. Should we be charging back for those types of things? So some of those aspects are starting to be looked at, but currently none of that does get charged back, just to answer the questions. Any questions from the board members?
I don't oppose at all in the town of Eagle and the village of Eagle having a safe and wonderful fire department. And I understand there's staffing concerns, and it's not entirely a budget thing, but I know that there's a grant on here to hire more people. But I've received 3 phone calls personally from one current firefighter and 2 former firefighters that want the requirement dropped that they have to be an EMT and a firefighter. Nurses don't want to run into burning buildings, and firefighters don't want to play with injured people. And I know that, I mean, you got a staffing issue, and I know all 3 of them said absolutely they would be in that station tomorrow morning if that requirement was dropped. So there's 3 people. I mean, it's that, you know, and my fear with grants is grants, you know, they go away. And then we're sitting here exactly 1 year from now, and these numbers are up another 16% or whatever, so.
And that concern was brought up at the fire board meeting, when this budget was approved. We will continue to work right grants to keep that program. It is truly a program, just like a Clean Roads, Clean Waters program. We got the grant, and it's not necessarily to hire. So let me correct that. It's not necessarily to hire new people within that grant. It's to be able to staff our station with 2 people on the weekends during the day, because we're having a hard time with paid on-call people showing on the weekends. So we have our part-time people that currently are looking for extra hours that are willing to work weekends. So we're not just gonna go out and hire new people, but when we staff those weekend positions, they will understand and be told up front, this is a 1-year program. And if we can't secure more funding for 2024, this program will go away, just like any other grant program that's out there. If we can't support the funding for it, we're not gonna ask the municipalities necessarily for more money, like, you know, going after referendums and all that, because that's the big buzz right now. If we can't fund this with grants right now for this year, for the year 2024, that program will go away.
Well,
We'll
a
have
couple
to
of
go
years
back.
ago, a referendum was unthinkable in Quantico. That wasn't on the radar, they didn't see it coming, and there they sit. And I just have this feeling that 2 or 3 years from now, that's what we're gonna be doing. I see the costs going up, and the expenses going up, and the budget's going up, and then we sit at our budget meeting, and I'm trying to paint our park buildings, and we're wondering where to get the money for that. And it's just, I mean, at some point, we want safety, but at some point, we gotta have affordability. And if that means dropping some requirements to get former staff, already pre-trained staff that know the equipment to come right back, I think that would be a great step.
And to that, Matt, we just had a discussion with that amongst the 4 chiefs, and about looking at the requirements and going back to the fire board to ask at different things, to be able to hire EMT onlys for part-time staffing, and, you know, instead of having to be an advanced. Right now, you don't have to be a firefighter, but the way that it's written is you either have to be a Fire 1 and EMT, or an advanced EMT. So if you're an advanced EMT, you don't have to have Fire 1. But the chiefs and I, we were talking about coming back to the fire board, putting a presentation together about being able to hire EMTs, so that we're actually working on that right now.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we talk about that in Waven in the beginning? Because North Prairie had firefighters only that are hired. That has been waived, I thought.
I thought, when we brought it up originally to the fire board, it was to augment our staffing with EMT only from internal, not to hire EMT onlys. So on our application, it still says advanced EMT, and that's where we wanted to come back and say, can we change that to EMT only? Because right now, we have current EMT onlys, and I hate to say, use the word only, but EMTs, that we put in places to help our daytime staffing. But we're not, it still says advanced on our application. So we wanted to come back and say, okay, we're doing this now, can we change the application to say EMT?
Well, and I don't want to get too big of a discussion because it's not really the budget, but
Right,
we have employees that are EMT basic only, correct?
correct.
We have employees that are firefighter only, correct?
Mhm.
I thought we waived it. That's how we have those people employed right now. If we didn't waive it, those people couldn't be employed right now because they don't meet the criteria. We can bring it up at the board and waive it again, I guess.
No, I thought we did.
And that, maybe that was my misunderstanding from that, when we talked about that it was open to new hires as well. So if that has been waived, great, then it's already taken care of now.
As far as the grant, yes, there was expressed a concern at the last meeting, and I expressed a concern. I still do not get the warm and fuzzies that we schedule people for this year utilizing the grant monies, that next year we say, we don't have the money. I think next year it's going to be, we've been covering these positions, it's been really good. We've always talked about needing more staff, we're getting that coverage. I think we maintain that. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing because, yes, I think we do need more coverage. I'm the first one at the meetings to talk about staffing concerns. I would rather see us build the staffing through what we can afford versus a grant jumping us up there because other than you doing it just to prove me wrong, I don't see that conversation next year.
I'm not doing it just to prove you wrong.
No, next year when you say we're cutting it back. But yes, grants are great. Like I said at the meeting, you get a grant to go buy extrication, go get a grant to buy a new ambulance, that's great. Grants for staffing, not a big fan of.
Are there other ways to utilize the grant program?
It is for EMS, so there were only 6 different categories. It was for equipment, which we wrote for computers. We wrote that for computers, for equipment. And there was a payroll, and it had to do with bringing in new people, being able to create positions with the grant, in new positions, and to be able to help staff the stations and things like that. So there was a very limited amount of different things, and up to a certain amount that you could write the grant for.
I think my only other question from the monetary aspect is, from the capital equipment, what are you going to be proposing to the boards later?
Capital equipment right now, we are in the process of working on the AFG grant, and all of that money we're putting into the AFG grant. The chiefs and I sat down and talked about, the one thing on there is that engine. But we are looking at different avenues. Matt, we actually did look at the avenue of taking our 1991 Pierce and sending it to Wyoming and basically having it rebuilt. So we are looking at that and looking at some prices on that to see where that would come in. So we're looking at all avenues to save money on that engine. And we actually talked to, Steve and I sat and we talked to Alex Feldy, who's the chief of Vernon. And that's what he does every year, or not every year, but when he needs a new engine, he goes out and finds a scrap engine and sends it to Wyoming, has it rebuilt. And he saves a lot of money doing that. So we actually have somebody in the county that does that program. He'll buy new once in a while, but for the most part, he gets refurbed engines that way. So definitely a consideration. As far as the extrication equipment, again, we're going to write a grant on that. We're going to talk to the membership to see if we can come up with some money that way. Just like the current membership donated that $19,000 worth of extrication last year. And so we're gonna talk to different ways of financing that. So I can't really answer that question right now because we may be able to come up with those capital expenses in other ways without having to come back to the boards to ask for that.
For the record, I am for this budget. As the Kettle Moraine Fire District, we did vote on it, and it was unanimous that to go with this budget.
I'll make a motion for the Village of Eagle to approve the Kettle Moraine Fire District 2023 budget.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Matt, second by Chris Lauterbach. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
So for the Town of Eagle Board, looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2023 Kettle Moraine Fire District budget as presented.
So we got a motion by Molly Schneider. Need a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Judy Rosensky. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, they can't vote.
Is there a
I'd
second?
like to make a motion to adjourn.
You already did. Is there a second? You got it.
Withdraw your motion.
I'll withdraw.
I'll second.
You're seconding the motion for adjournment? Yeah. Motion by Greg Hines, seconded by Matt. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
For the Town of
Meeting's
Eagle,
adjourned at 7:02.
adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:02 p.m.
Motion by Molly Schneider. Need a second?
I'll second.
Second by Judy Rosensky. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, Frank, I said.
Adjourned.